I am in what is currently called Toronto, Canada, what is really the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. We are here to talk about why finance policy in Canada is currently bad for the climate. Canada has made global and national climate commitments and has a number of policies to move us towards those goals and commitments that we've set. But finance is a completely missing piece of this puzzle. The financial system needs to align with climate action. Money has to shift out of polluting investments and into green solutions if we want to do our part in keeping a safe global climate. But our banks and pension funds still invest in the old economy. We need policy solutions to ensure that finance aligns with climate action and that finance aligns with Canada's climate commitments. We are very lucky to have with us Rosa Galvez, the independent senator from Quebec, to talk about the Climate Aligned Finance Act, known as CAFA, which she introduced into the Senate. CAFA would be a springboard for ensuring that our financial system aligns with positive climate outcomes and drives our financial sector in line with our climate goals. Welcome, Senator Galvez. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm going to jump right into our questions. So, Senator Galvez, what got you interested in climate finance?
Well, as you know, I'm an engineer. So when systems work and when system doesn't work, that interests me. And I think that our economic system have attained its limit. And actually, if we really want to solve the environmental problem, we really have to look into our economic model. So CAFA is trying to force these changes in on the economical model by aligning our financial sector with our climate commitments.
Tell us about the Climate Aligned Finance Act, CAFA.
It's a comprehensive package of legislative changes that tries to take the financial sector, which is composed of banks, insurance, pension plans, or any entity that is federally regulated in the financial world, and try to tell them, listen, we have climate commitments, and you should align all your activities to these climate commitments. So what are the climate commitments? Is that Canada is a party of the United Nations Framework for Climate Change. We are signatories of the Paris Agreement, but we also have passed a Net Zero 2050 Accountability Act. We have a carbon tax, and we are also signatories of and we have passed a law to respect the United Nations rights of indigenous people. So all of these are commitments that takes in consideration what do we do to the planet in terms of planet warming, climate change. So we are pushing the financial sector to be aligned with these objectives. How does it do it? Is in 6 actions. One first action is to declare that these financial entities have a superseding duty to align with our climate commitments, that they need to plan using science-based targets in a calendar, in a given technology. We are technology agnostic. We are not saying use this technology because we know that Canada is vast and Canada has different sources for energy. They'll have to choose their path, but they have to align with the climate commitments. We want the boards where financial decisions are taken, where right now at present they are facilitating and financing greenhouse gas emissions. We want them to change. How? By bringing expertise of climate change into these boards and by eliminating conflict of interest. We also want that the regulators put in place guidelines that tells all these entities what does it mean to be aligned with the climate commitments and give more detail on if they want to do it through a taxonomy, well, let it be. And finally, to ask the government to report on the progress and to tell us how much we are reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and how much flow is going towards the transition, in order to have at the end the real accountability that everybody, and especially the financial sector in Canada, must assume responsibly with respect to the damage they are causing by fueling the climate crisis.
So CAFA would help ensure that banks and pension funds are really putting their money where their mouth is and addressing greenwashing.
Exactly, clearly. Yeah. And I think that when the environment is clear, and when the rules and the rules are clear, I think that will bring confidence in investors. That will be confidence in these entrepreneurs that wants to move into a cleaner technology. So it will just give more trust and confidence for things to happen naturally, and that we can take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to us.
How does our financial system, our banks, our pension funds, insurers, how do those affect our ability to tackle climate change?
It's a direct relationship. So what happened is that our economical system, which is linear, tell us that we will extract, that we will manufacture a product, and that we will consume it, and then we will throw it. Whether it is greenhouse gases, or whether it is plastic, or whether it is food waste, it's an externality, and it's not being taken in consideration by the linear economic model. And so at the end, these externalities, which are negative, which are the greenhouse gases that cause the planet warming, or the plastic that is in the ocean, they cost us. It costs us the cleanup, it costs in our health, it costs in the natural resources that has been wasted and that are not going to be there for future generations.
Going back to banks, pension funds, insurers, how do their actions, their investments, affect whether or not we succeed on meeting our climate goals?
I think sometimes that in purpose we have made the economic sector or the financial sector very complicated for the understanding, or toward the understanding of the common citizens. And we lack financial education. And we should put attention into educate people about what composes the financial sector. And you're right. So we have the banks, we have the investors, we have the insurance, and we have the pension plans. And what happens is that when you have a project on exploration of petroleum, well, you need the money to start these projects. And so you need the insurance, you need the bankers, and you need the investors. And so they facilitate and they finance these greenhouse gas emissions by their activities, by their services, by their lending, by their advising, and nobody accounts for them. And so imagine if all these funds, these investments that are going into fossil fuels will go into what we need at this point, which is accelerating the transition to a low carbon economy, we wouldn't be in this mess.
A lot of Canadian banks, pension funds have made commitments to reduce their emissions. They've made commitments to net zero, all voluntary though. Do these voluntary promises go far enough?
I don't think the voluntary disclosure is going to take us where we need to go. Actually, if we look at what is happening, these voluntary disclosure are causing penalties to those responsible corporations that are declaring the risk, because they are showing vulnerability. What we and disclosing, as some people say, you can compare it with different situations. One is that, okay, we're in a boat and there's holes, and we are just creating more holes and saying, okay, look at all these holes, and just disclosing the situation, but not doing actively a solution. I say that it's more it's also an ethical situation, because the people that knows about it are themselves, it's the system itself, and they should go beyond the disclosure by themselves. but they won't do it because they are in a sort of conflict of interest, because they are taking advantage of the situation of no disclosing. And we need to find a solution. Declaring that we have a problem is not enough. We need to have the remedy. And when we have the remedy, we need to treat the patient. It's not just disclosing a diagnostics. We have to go beyond that. Unfortunately, this happens many times that the government relies on an industry to auto-regulate itself. I have seen it many times in my career. Unfortunately, by doing so, the government puts the sector in a conflict of interest because they are going to find ways where to cut, where to reduce their costs, their expenses. And right now, any transition to a low-carbon economy is not seen as an investment in the future. It's seen as a cost. It's seen as an expense. And this is sad because historically we have seen in other industrial revolutions, how there are opportunities. And there are so many opportunities that come with this low-carbon economy that unfortunately we are not seeing it. And we are a G7 country. And our competitiveness and the relationship with our allies and with our business partners is going to be impacted because we are not in the same race. We are behind in this race to net zero 2050.
Okay, so I'd written that analogy about plugging the holes of a boat versus just counting them, right? So are we going to cut our emissions, we're going to reduce them and plug the holes of the boat, or are we just going to count them? What needs to happen is, of course, reducing the emissions. So you raised a couple really great points about not just reporting on climate factors, but actually moving in a better direction. So I'm really glad to see that analogy picking up steam. And we certainly need to go beyond just counting the holes to instead plug them. And then moreover, financial institutions, are they doing enough on their own with their own promises to start reducing those emissions? Or do we need rules in place like CAFA, Climate Aligned Finance Act, to make sure that they do good on those promises and turn those promises into action?
There are two things. On one hand, there is the ambition to, and the pledges that are being done, but the other issue is the reality. So fortunately, in this problem, everything comes down to numbers. So the numbers is how much are we reducing our greenhouse gas emissions in Canada? And we are the only country in G7 that has not succeeded in reducing its greenhouse gas emissions. The other number is how much money and funds and investments we are putting into the low carbon economy that we want to attain. And unfortunately, we are very far. There are so many statistics about that. The one that I remember is that the banks are putting $99 on fossil fuels and only $1 into electrification or renewable energy. So this is very important because when you think in Canada and you think, for example, that it has the longest coastline and it has in some areas the highest tides in the world and in some areas very strong waves, and we don't have any maritime renewable energy project. So some provinces have banned wind power. So on one hand, we are saying we want to get to net zero 2050, and we want to be in the race of towards this low carbon economy, but on the other hand, we seem to be putting all kinds of obstacles to attain these objectives.
So let's talk about greenwashing. Greenwashing is when a company or an organization claims to be doing something sustainable, but they aren't actually. Would policies, financial policy like CAFA, help address greenwashing and help Canadians trust that their money is truly going towards something sustainable?
Yes, because CAFA actually makes it impossible for a corporation to greenwash, because it will push for science to scientifically determine what are the targets, and to present a plan that will make sure that you attain the targets that you have set it using science. And there are so many forms of greenwashing. No, there are so many forms. You are misleading, representing the qualities of a corporation, but also you can cherry pick data, or you can also embellish a small effort and make it exaggerate your effort. But the numbers don't lie. So if we have to attain goals, and these are numbers, in greenhouse gas reductions in a given time, and using existing technologies and not future technologies, not promises, then it makes it more difficult to greenwash.
CAFA seems like the obvious trajectory. Are other countries ahead of Canada when it comes to climate-aligned financial policy?
I'm happy to say that CAFA is a comprehensive package of different practices that we saw in the world, and adapted to the Canadian legislation. So we, before designing CAFA, we did a vast consultation, and we saw what was being done elsewhere, especially in our country that are considered our peers. So UK, Europe, Australia, Commonwealth countries. And we saw that there is a lot of progress in Europe, in UK. Take, for example, the Green New Deal in Europe. Take, for example, the Green Taxonomy in Europe. Take, for example, the climate bill in UK. And even now the Americans, when we consider them being very polarized, they managed to pass two big bills, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Jobs Act, that accelerates their transition. So even despite this cliff, this division of their population, they managed to get themselves together in order to accelerate the transition, because they see the economical potential. So now I'm being told that these two bills in the US are turbocharging and it's a game changer in this race to the transition to net zero 2050. And Canada is behind. And that will have an impact again on our competitiveness and our innovation capacity. Because if we don't develop our own technologies, we will have to buy from somebody from another country the technology. And we will have to use it, and then of course we will have to pay. But I think that there are some forces that pushes us to a statu quo in front of very evident opportunities and much better situation. When you think that petroleum exploration is getting very complex because the normal conventional oil is not there anymore, when you really need to go down kilometers in the ocean floor, when you know that petroleum is subject to geopolitical conditions and situations that change, that make it very easy to fall into a boom and bust economy. When you know that you will depend on the oil that comes, or the gas that comes from elsewhere to heat your homes or to produce your products. And when you compare it with clean energy, which follows which follows, which is right now in a free fall of prices. And you have so many different possibilities. You have the wind, you have the biomass, you have the solar, you have all kinds of different sources that are there available to you. You don't need to pass through all the process of extraction and transformation and transmission. And it's cleaner, and it's safer, and it's cheaper. So when you compare these two, it's so easy to find that, okay, why are we continue doing this? So it's incoherent. And then is when it comes the issue with the conflict of interest, with the issue with, okay, let's follow the money, and the issue that, okay, we are comfortable in the status quo, and we are letting go many opportunities that can really, really be good for our economy in Canada.
What are the risks for Canada's economy, for Canadians, for our success on climate action and ability to attract opportunities? What's the risk if Canada falls behind all of those other leaders on setting and delivering climate-aligned financial policy?
Well, it has many negative impacts. Let's say, for example, just this with the two bills in the US. So I've been told that this is going to impact the eligibility of Canadian companies going in and having benefits from the trickle down from these trillions of dollars that are going to be injected for these two game changer acts. The other thing is that if we, as I mentioned, if we don't develop our own technologies, and if we don't do this transition, then we will depend on others. And that is going to be costing us a lot every year. So every year of inaction brings up higher the prices to pay for this change that is happening, whether we like it or whether we don't like it. It's happening all over the world. There is another example. You know, Europe is saying, well, we are not going to import any more timber from places where they don't respect the commitments of sustainability. Okay, so we won't be able to export our timber. Multilateral banks, such as the Inter-American Bank, such as the Asian Bank, such as the World Bank and the IMF, they are aligning with Paris. So if we don't do that, we will be penalized because we won't have access to these, no, I don't say markets, but these agreements or these possibilities of cooperation and collaboration with other countries around the world.
What effect would climate-aligned financial policy like CAFA have on our economy overall in Canada?
It will have direct positive and co-benefits because, first of all, as I was saying, you know, if you go into renewables, you are not anymore dependent on the geopolitics. You become independent in energy because it follows this tendency of the more you know about the technology, the cheaper it gets. Now, solar, wind, hydraulic has gone to prices per kilowatt that are so low and without any subsidy. When you compare how the renewable energy has developed and how the fossil fuel developed, you will see that one sector had for more than 50 years so much public assistance. We have been giving them between 8 and 12 billion
to the fossil fuel sector.
Yes, to the fossil fuel sector per year, while the renewable energy hasn't received nothing of that. And so we can see, we can evaluate, we can assess that this sector is very robust because it hasn't needed any assistance to develop. And this is what we have seen around the world already. So now, even today, now there are some countries that their energy bills are negative because they don't need this petroleum, they don't need this gas, they don't need this resource that is so difficult to get, that comes at a very and higher cost. These are, low-hanging fruits: the air, the wind, the sun, the waves, and the currents, or even the gravity. Because I've seen in Spain, gravity batteries. So you are comparing something that costs very little, that is safe, and that is clean, with something that it has cost so much to us. And maybe that's one of the reasons. Maybe that's one of the reasons that for those who wants to remain in the statu quo, is that they have invested so much that they think, well, okay, we'll still need to collect more. But in reality, when you really do the math, you see that what they are leaving behind is sad, is all these externalities, is all these tailing ponds, are all these wells, abandoned wells. And what they are leaving behind is these extreme weather events that are threatening their own sector. This is happening right now in Alberta. So they have created this condition of pumping so much groundwater, 4 barrels of water per barrel of oil, and there is no, the levels of the surface water has gone down, so the forest, because of planet warming, is getting drier and drier, so it's becoming a fuel for wildfires. And because of these wildfires that are so close to their installations, thousands of wells needed to be closed. So it's a vicious circle, and we need to stop the vicious circle, and we have to close chapters of industrial technology and move to climate safe future using low carbon intensity technologies.
Thank you, Rosa, for taking the time for this conversation today. Thank you for introducing this really world-leading legislation that would help advance a much more stable economy in Canada, would help advance a much more resilient climate globally, and is really a brilliant solution to help address the biggest gap in Canada's climate policy. So thank you, Senator Galvez, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie.